when I was a teenager, I mean, I did, God, if I had to write a book about the stupid things I did when I was a teenager, it'd be a very thick book. And it'd be a worse book if there were photographs accompanying it. And, you know, but I had this advantage that young people today don't have, which was, well, when my day of stupidity was over, I could go home and it was not there. You know, like, it wasn't on Twitter, it wasn't on Facebook. There wasn't 20 of my friends communicating to me about, you know, what foolish thing I did at the party the night before. And young people now, they're just followed by paparazzi, essentially, constantly. And I've watched that with the young teenage daughters of many of my friends, because my kids were a little too old for that to actually have happened to them. But God, it's miserable. And we know that there is some relationship between the amount of time people use Facebook, for example, and their mental health, which the more they use Facebook, the more depressed they are. And it might be that the depression is driving the Facebook use, but the causal pathway seems to be the other way around, which is, you know, it's just playing that unbelievably exposed social game. That's hard on people. And these aren't trivial technologies, you know. I mean, they're transforming the way we communicate with one another, and they're completely uncontrolled experiments. We have no idea what the medium or long-term consequences are going to be, and we'll never find out either, because of course the communication landscape changes so quickly that by the time you get adapted to one communication technology, another one has come along that's even more confusing that you now have to master. And so, well, that's why it's necessary for everyone to develop their own modicum of wisdom, I believe, because I don't know how else we're going to be able to deal with this technological transformation that's going to come across, is already coming across us like a tidal wave. And, you know, you ain't seen nothing yet. The people in Silicon Valley have plans that, well, that make you think that the whole place should probably be bombed just for the safety of the rest of us, you know, because there's tremendous danger in that rapid acceleration of machine intelligence, and we have absolutely no idea where that's headed. So, and maybe it'll be great. It's possible that it'll be great, but power cuts both ways. So, you know, you always want to look at what the consequence of a technological transformation is. And this is a big transformation. You know, there used to be flagship media sources that were basically attempting to give a balanced picture, and I think they did a pretty good job 30 years ago. Time magazine, even the mainstream news programs, they had a professionalism that was associated with their journalism that had some degree of objectivity, and that's fragmented. And it's fragmenting because there's all these media sources, like innumerable media sources. And so it's driving people who are trying to get attention to desperation, and they exaggerate the polarity. And so that puts everyone on edge, and Twitter puts people on edge. And this is part of the reason I'm still thinking about what to do with Twitter. Maybe I should not use it for a month, because Twitter, I think, my experience with Twitter is that I'm wandering around in the world and everything's fine. The streets are peaceful, the people I meet are doing well, that your cities, I've been to, I don't know how many American cities in the last 4 months, like 40 or 50, they look great. You know, I mean, everywhere I go, there's construction, and the country feels like it's moving. I got tangled up so badly in scandal 2 years ago that I've been on top of, especially social media, like an obsessed addict for 2 years, trying to manage it. You know, but it's not clear to me that that's been a good thing. I don't think Twitter is a good thing for my sanity. Twitter is so contentious. It's so, I mean, if you want a daily dose of hate, you can get it in 10 minutes on Twitter. You know, if I post something, you know, there's a number of comments about whatever I posted, and 1 out of 4 of them is brutally rude and obnoxious, as nasty as it can possibly be. And that's very, very common. And like, you know, people are quite sensitive to negative information. We're more sensitive to negative information than we are to positive information. And I'm not complaining. I don't have to use Twitter. It's a completely voluntary choice. And I'm certainly a massive beneficiary of the existence of social media. So I'm not complaining about it. I don't have a right to complain about it. But it exists in absolute contrast to my experiences in the world. Like, it's not like I'm walking down the street and one person out of 4 jumps out of an alley and like curses me. But I've had thousands of interactions with individual people on the street, let's say in airports and so forth, in the last 6 months, and every single one of them has been overwhelmingly positive. So that's reality. Then I go into Twitter and it's like, oh my God, it's just brutal. When I was still working as a professor, you know, I'd get my feedback from my students, and my feedback has been generally extraordinarily positive. So maybe there'll be 50 comments from students, and 3 of them will be negative, something like that, or 2, and often quite nasty, the negative ones. And you remember the negative ones, and that is what people are like. We're much more sensitive to negative, and the reason for that is negative things can kill you. Positive things can make you a little happier. It is literally the case that, although it's been a little better over the last 3 or 4 months, for about 18 months in a row, I was at the center of a scandal that could have taken me out at least twice a week. So constant, non-stop scandal of one form or another. And so that took a lot of juggling and management to see what was going on, and I was paying attention to social media and trying to figure out how to respond in the press and on YouTube and on my blog and all of these sorts of things, trying to learn how to do that. And so it's been an obsessive learning experience, let's say. YouTube has served me very, very well. My blog works out very well for me. The podcast, I have a podcast, it's very popular. That's worked out really well. Facebook, I don't pay much attention to Facebook, although I post on it. Twitter, that's something else. Twitter is, vicious, I don't know what to do with Twitter. You know, there's a part of me that there's people I keep up with on Twitter, the people I follow, some of these IDW types, so to speak. You know, I see what Shapiro's posting, I see what Brett Weinstein's posting, and Sam Harris, and I kind of keep in the loop that way. And I feel a moral obligation to keep up. And I have 900,000 followers, and I feel an obligation to them too. But there's also this addictive curiosity, you know, that what's happening? And I tried to pull myself away from that on the TV news, because it's the same thing except in much less concentrated form. And it was good for me. And I do think if it's only important today, it's not important. Right? If it's news, it doesn't matter if you don't know about it for a week.
That's powerful.
It's still news. But I still haven't figured out how to completely deal with all this social reach I have at my fingertips. I don't know exactly how to manage it. I have pulled back from Twitter almost entirely in the last 4 months, and I can't say that that's done me any psychological harm.